Hello, my name is John Holland from Glasgow University. I would like to present my paper on how financial firms can go green. I'm just going to put my slides up now. Here are my slides. If we begin on slide 1, we can see that I'm at the Adam Smith Business School in Glasgow. We've just had COP26 here, very exciting. Lots of talk about financial firms. In fact, finance is seen as the main agency now to help real businesses go green. How our savings are then reallocated into loans or equity investments or insurance to large corporates and medium-sized and small businesses is going to be essential for them to change their dark carbon energy sources to nice green solar and wind sources. Just think about what a financial firm is. Here it is, a financial firm in the centre box there, surrounded by a real economy and financial markets. It's now subject to climate change, which is causing real physical risks in the world, political risks also, as people change the law on how firms and individuals can behave. This is changing the financial firm in a very fundamental way. If you think of the savings that go into a bank or the loans that go out at the other end, these are now having to become green oriented. So they are deployed into real physical assets that we hope will bring us within the Paris 1.5 centigrade target. That means that the behaviour of those financial assets and liabilities inside the financial firm are not going to be the same as they have been in the past. Now, it's that sameness, in statistical terms, the stochastic behaviour, the distributions, have been the source of stability. So change here could actually hurt the core function of the firm. So that's the financial machine at the heart, but also surrounding that financial machine, financial intermediation process here on the second slide, is a non-financial part, what I call the invisibles, the head, the house, and the community. By head, I mean the top teams, board, chief executives, house, the organisation, socio-technical context in which organise work, the hierarchy, the departments, the teams, how they're all connected, and how they deliver financial services. Community is how these people experience living together. Now, this soft financial context is critical for the hard financial context process inside financial firms. If it doesn't work, these firms fail. You've only got to think of how hubris in some top teams completely destroyed some large financial firms in the great financial crisis to realise how things like culture, the way you're organised, your philosophy, what values you have. Do you just pursue financial wealth alone, or do you pursue net zero and corporate social responsibility? These things affect the financial assets and liabilities and financial risks, and they affect how we can learn how to change financial firms and their core function to help keep within Paris 1.5 degrees. Okay, Climate change is a major problem, it's a complex problem, and you need a big picture to understand it. There's lots of change pressures here. Climate change itself is causing problems of biodiversity, causing problems of social responsibility. Now, we know humans are behind all this. Somehow we've got to figure out a way of dealing with this. But this external change impacts on the internal factors, like what they know, how they think, what their values are. If they interact in negative ways, the financial firms can fail. In particular, we see knowledge gaps and values gap. They don't know how to handle new risks. They don't know what is the right thing to do. What they believe the right thing to do is just to make money. Well, I think some of these values and knowledge gaps have been solved by alliances around the world. We saw COP26 in Glasgow. It's a pretty good example of lots of bankers and lots of businessmen getting around trying to figure out how to change the firms. But this still is a complex, difficult thing to manage. It's very, very complex cognitive limitations for individuals in top teams, and facing an uncertain future. It's not just climate change, it's how humans respond to that and what they do. There's great uncertainty about us. So this is part of the problem at the level of the firm, despite the attempts of alliances like at COP26 to solve it. We need innovation in thinking about the firm, not just financial loans or investments or financial markets. We need to think about the key engine, the big elephant, invisible elephant, wandering around in these markets. So here we are. Here's the changes, external changes, global politics, finance community changes, setting the targets. That's all going on as the background. That's acting in a positive direction to push these firms in the right direction, to make the internal changes in the soft part of the business and in the hard financial part. But it's complex. What's the big picture? Well, I use 4 empirical themes from studies of many firms to understand this, what I call the head, the house, the community, the machine. This is a metaphor, a narrative approach. This is complex, therefore you find a simple way to communicate. Head, house, community, machine is a way of doing that. So here we see the external changes impinging on the firm, and here's what's changing in the firm. The head, the top teams, the house, socio-technical structure, how they're organised, culture, technology, and community, how people live and work together, how they interact, how they collaborate, how they think together. These are pretty critical parts of the lived experience inside an organisation, and this is what makes the financial machine work well or badly. It turning deposits into loans is not just an automatic process. Somebody has to think about what's going on here, especially what are the loans for? What are the financial investments for? What is the insurance for? So this is why we're interested in getting this bigger picture of what's going on. Let's just think about the head first. It's in the case, I'm just going to very briefly mention the empirical data here, okay, because there's too much. It's confusing. Strategic thinking in the head. Top teams, they're active in their external peer groups. So top teams, board members, chief executives, treasurers, finance people are out in the finance community, like at COP26, talking to people amongst their peer groups. So there's learning across the sector. And they're clarifying their purpose. They're sharing it. They're learning how to adapt finance values to include net zero values and corporate responsibility values, and learning collectively how to make changes to their businesses, to their house and their community and their financial machine. That's what's going on. This is a pretty important area to think about, because many problems are too complex for one individual, one firm, one team to solve. This collective effort across the world is critical. Let's go down to the house, the bit of the firm that people live in. This is the house with all of its plumbing, its walls and roof, and the way things move around inside. I've broken this down into three strategic clusters in the socio-technical world: the social structure, social organization, culture, knowledge. That's both at the whole firm and the level of individual firms, individual teams and individuals. Social structure. Then the mechanisms for control and influence. Well, we know, we've heard of control systems in most organizations, management control systems. But one of the critical control systems is this hidden, elusive quality of firms called the culture. So these mechanisms are pretty important as part of the context. They're part of the organizing of the firm. And then technology, that's part of the glue, isn't it? How you allow people to have the same spreadsheets, share the same data, communicate through the system using the technology. And systems, intelligent software to check when the risks are getting too dodgy. So the house is the structure of the plumbing. Let's move on to the community. But again, this is, again, from the cases, you find these kind of themes coming up. There's a lot of thinking in the firms, how do you give a green orientation to the way people interact in the firm? How do people interact in the firm? Well, one of the ways they interact is the boss tells people down below, do it, top down. So that's the board to the executive team, down to middle management, down to frontline staff dealing with customers and back office people, very crudely. But you've also got a lot of people in the back office and frontline and middle management engaging with each other and with customers, learning and feeding information out amongst each other. And they're feeding that back up, the hierarchy, bottom up. And you can see it's multilateral. It's all over, the communications are all over the place. And you really need to have some kind of idea of that. And again, the case firms talk about this a lot. How do you design those interactions so they're aligned in the same direction for green change in the social behavior in the firm, so that you make change in the financial decisions so that the firm is supporting green activity in real businesses and going towards net zero aims and Paris 1.5 degrees centigrade. So this is pretty important. So all this is the soft bit of the business, the head, the house, the community, etc. And the bottom bit then is the financial machine. This is how people normally talk about financial firms. I think you will find that all the theory is really about finance theory of financial firms. And I've written extensively on this. Notably recently, I've explained how the soft bit can connect to the financial machine in many ways. So, the financial machine is where financial decisions are made. So a single loan to a customer, 30,000 loans to customers, forming a portfolio of loans with diversified risk. How are they financed? Through deposits from 100,000 people, diversified deposits. Do you get the picture? You take in deposits, you make loans, you diversify risks across the portfolio. And at the level of a transaction, you manage risk through the way you design contracts. So financial risk is control. And yet the whole firm, the whole financial firm is a machine, because the top team also add in cash assets, liquid assets to absorb risks, cause the fear of running out of money. They'll have lots of equity, because if the debts go bad or the investments go bad, the equity will take up that loss. So you've got this risk balancing machine. That's well understood. But that's no good just understanding it. You need good people with good values to drive it in the right direction. And by that, I mean green-oriented, net zero-oriented people who are looking to get green supplies of funds to turn into green uses of funds to help us move the economy in the right direction. And these people have got to be well aware of how that financial machine works and how to manage the risks. If they just allow their pursuit of green net zero aims and corporate responsibility aims to dominate, and they ignore this financial machine, that will also go bust. So you need all these elements. They need to be working together. Okay, so do you see this is a model This is grounded theory, Strauss and Corbin, speaking to lots of people in these firms and listening to them at conferences and engaging with them and trying to find out what is the overall structure of the firm and of change in those firms. That's where this comes from. Not invented off the top of my head. I've got lots of publications backing this up, going back 20, 30 years. So this is a green variant of those ideas. We're trying to turn my knowledge of what I know about financial firms in a way that has a different social purpose to what it's had historically. Historically, being a good financial firm, turning one kind of money into another kind of money for financial value aims has seemed to be a very good role. But now we are asking the question, can you do something else? Because there's a real danger that financial model alone will kill the planet. Whereas having a net zero, social responsible set of values driving this financial machine through this complex organization, through the head, the house, and the community, we might be able to do something about changing the world. So here's a simple way of looking at it. I think it's simple. Well, it's a lot simpler than the way we normally talk about it, which is normally fragmented, people just talking about bits and pieces of governance in the head, or talking about culture in the house, or talking about control systems and how it impacts upon green change. We need to think how these are all connected. Okay. Now the point is, I've given you the impression that it's all empirics. It's all grounded theory coming out of a direct study of the firm, but it's not. If you look at strategic thinking in the head at the top there, there's a lot of literature on learning organizations, planning and strategic choice, how the firm seeks to get resilience. These are well-known researchers, but you need to have specialist literature to explain them. Look down at the house, the literature on organizational change, technology change, change in teams and routines, changes in knowledge, meritum, intellectual capital. Lots of literature there. So beside each one of these empirical stories, there's a theoretical interpretation from a relevant literature. Look over at community. Lots of ideas here about the community in action, how people experience the change process, the storytelling, the tone from the top. And Bourdieu, for example, his ideas of capitals and habitus, or Wyke and sense making. So you have some ideas here which gives us focus more on the individual and the teams and their experience of change. Now that is pretty critical. You won't manage change unless you understand how people experience change and want it to be done from their perspective, not from some top-down head or organizational change perspective. It's got to be from within the individual. And there's quite a lot of literature there on that. And if you look down to the machine, this is behavioral theory of financial intermediation. I've written quite a lot on this. So Lewis and Davis, Scholtens and Van Wenzel, lots of stuff here, okay? Now the point about this is great, but these are separate areas, the head, the house, the community, and the machine. And I've given you empirical data for each area, and I've given you literature for each area, but this is one system. This is one connected, interacting system. You need a story here, a theoretical story here, which connects these. Here is the theoretical story. I could use systems theory. That's quite good. I can use Bourdieu and his ideas. Pretty good. Syatt and Marsh, the original behavioral theory of the firm. These are overall connecting theories which connect ideas of the head, the house, community, machine together. Well, that's what we need if we're going to understand what's going on here. This is just, again, as you can see, I'm just glossing over quite a lot here. Now, the point is, I'm developing a connected narrative, both empirical and theoretical, system-wide. And this is comparable to Kay and King's approach. There you are. Mr. Kay, Governor of the Bank, Mr. King, Governor of the Bank of England, showing his penance now for the crisis, saying that we need to go beyond conventional approaches to understand financial businesses. And this This is an attempt to do what they say by breaking into four comprehensible metaphors, the headhouse community machine, to develop a big picture of what is going on. And within each metaphor, it develops a comprehensible narrative to show what's going on, what's happening in each specific area. And it focuses on a few variables in each area and then connects them up through the larger theory and larger green behavioural theory of the firm that is being portrayed here. It's not possible to manage or remove uncertainty, but you have something like this. You have a way of thinking which allows you to be adaptive and open. So it's a kind of systematic response to uncertainty without it being a structured idea that you know how to handle uncertainty. It's a different approach. So the paper aims to answer the research question, how can financial firms go green? And it's done that by using the green-oriented financial theory of the firm, the big picture. And it's a kind of knowledge risk management strategy, closing knowledge and values gaps. As Mark Carney said, it's a means to realign value in financial markets with the values of wider society. In the field of practice, this approach has many uses to make a difference, to help the financial firms in their cooperation, for all of us to debate green change in financial firms. Now, I think the framework also tells us something about the business model in these firms and hence is useful for integrated reporting. So reporting, I don't know if you noticed there was a new sustainability reporting institute set up at COP26 worldwide, run by the FRS. I think they need ideas like this. Now also, this can help the field of academia. I think we can improve the research program about green-oriented finance. We can use the interdisciplinary approach here to talk about financial firms in a coherent, integrated way, but we can also ask the question, how does this connect up with conventional finance theory? Finance theory has been characterized as a house without windows. Here's a way of making people in that house open the windows and look out and connect to the rest of the world. Thank you. Any questions? Okay.